Good evening to all of you. To make sure that I don't forget it at the end, I want to thank now the people who have made this series of 4 talks possible. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. They have made me feel at home. Thank you, Karel. Thank you, Bindu. Thank you, Sergey. And thank you, the goddesses of the airwaves, Akashvani, there behind. Thanks to all of them. The Bhagavad Gita is, of course, very well known by all of you. But there is a side to it that is not so often put into the limelight. It is this incredible spiritual fact of the God, Krishna, instructing his preferred disciple, Arjuna. Arjuna was the protagonist of the battle on the side of the Pandavas against the Kauravas. But Arjuna, what happened 3,100 years before the Common Era, which means 5,000 years ago, is interpreted by Sri Aurobindo as Arjuna being us. Because Sri Aurobindo went with the Bhagavad Gita into Aripur jail, into his cave of Tapasya, with the Bhagavad Gita and with the Upanishads. And there he did that revolutionary Aurobindian deed of going into them, seeing what it was, not taking them as literature, holy scripture, or whatever, but seeing how it could be practiced. And he has left us the precious inheritance of the essays on the Gitas, which are one of his less read books. Arjuna, as you know, before the battle between the two armies, all at once his courage fails. And he, whose profession, whose life it is to fight as a Kshatriya, starts doubting and expresses his doubts to Krishna, the charioteer. I don't know whether you remember that Krishna originally stood above the battle, above both parties. And he gave a choice. You can either choose my army, the army of his kingdom, or you can have me as charioteer. Duryodhana, head of the Kauravas, chose the army. Arjuna chose the charioteer. And Arjuna asks, what is it all about? Why do I have to slay my teachers, my relatives, my uncles, my nephews, my friends? Show me what you are. Show me the truth of all it. Convince me. And Krishna says, in Sri Aurobindo's translation, thou shalt see my hundreds and thousands of divine forms, various in kind, various in shape and hue. What thou hast to see, the human eye cannot grasp. But there is a divine eye, an inmost seeing, and that eye I now give to thee. And Arjuna sees the brilliant shape of the divine. The supreme form is then made visible. It is that of the infinite Godhead, whose faces are everywhere and in whom are all the wonders of existence, who multiplies all the many marvelous revelations of his being, a worldwide divinity seeing with innumerable eyes, speaking through innumerable mouths, armed for battle with numberless divine uplifted weapons, glorious with the divine ornaments of beauty, robed in heavenly raiment of deity, lovely with garlands of divine flowers, fragrant with divine perfumes. Such is the light of this body of God, as if 1,000 suns had risen at once in heaven. The whole world, multitudinously divided and yet unified, is visible in the body of the God of gods. You all know that that was what came to the mind of Robert Oppenheimer when he saw the first explosion of the first atom bomb in Alamogordo, the body of God, as if 1,000 suns had risen at once in heaven. Arjuna beholds that. But Krishna says this is not all, because there is also the other side of the divine, the black side of the force. This Godhead who embraces the world with his numberless arms and destroys with his millioned hands, whose eyes are suns and moons, has a face of blazing fire, and is ever burning up the whole universe with the flame of his energy. The companies of the gods enter into that being. It has enormous burning eyes. It has mouths that gape to devour, terrible with many tasks of destruction. It has faces like the fires of death and time. The kings and the captains and the heroes on both sides of the world battle are hastening into its tusked and terrible jaws. And some are seen with crushed and bleeding heads caught between its teeth of power. The nations are rushing to destruction with helpless speed into its mouths of flame. With those burning mouths, the form of death is licking all the regions around. The whole world is full of his burning energies and baked in the fierceness of his lustres. And Arjuna is terrified. Declare to me who thou art that wearest this form of fierceness. I would know what thou art, who was from the beginning, for I know not the will of thy workings. This I find so important, because mostly the spiritual search is presented as something towards satisfaction, hearing, seeing, floating a foot above the ground. But that battle is our battle now. For Sri Aurobindo comments, this is not the text of the Gita, but the comments in the essays of the Gita immediately follow this description. This world of our battle and our labor is a fierce, dangerous, destructive, devouring world in which lives exist precariously, and the soul and body of man move along in enormous perils. A world in which by every step forward, whether we will it or not, something is crushed and broken, in which every breath of life is a breath also of death. To put away the responsibility for all that on the shoulders of some semi-omnipotent devil, or to put it aside as part of nature, making an unbridgeable opposition between world nature and God nature, as if nature were independent of God, or to throw the responsibility on man and his sins, so if he had had as if he had had a preponderant voice in the making of this world, or could create anything against the will of God, are clumsily comfortable devices. Sri Aurobindo is enumerating here in this long sentence the attitude which answers the question of any intelligent people who is following a path or is a member of a religion. Why did God create this world of suffering and death, of this devouring, of this crushing, of time, the devourer, and the fires, and everything that kills and effaces humanity? Why? As Sri Aurobindo says, it is a false standpoint, a clumsily comfortable device to say, you know, it is not God who is responsible, it is the devil, or it is the demiurge, as we have seen in Gnosticism. You know, it's not God who is responsible because there are two gods, a black one and a white one. These things are divided, like in Zoroastrianism or in Manichaeism. You know, it is not God who is responsible, it is the first man, Adam, in paradise, who has fallen, who has sinned, and all humanity is inheriting that what he has caused as evil in the world. Sri Aurobindo says these are clumsy responses, because, and there he is as always, the revolutionary extremist. If that is all, if all is Brahman, then anything that exists in the manifestation and outside is that. The evil, what we see as evil, is that. We have to look courageously in the face of the reality and see that it is God and none else who has made this world in his being, and that he has made it in the way it is. We have to see that nature devouring her children, time eating up the lives of creatures, death universal and ineluctable, and the violence of the Rudra forces in man and nature are also the supreme Godhead in one of his cosmic figures. Few can accept that, none can understand it. Because if Sri Aurobindo, when people asked in letters, please, why is there a universe, where is the suffering, he says, the reason behind is not understandable at the moment for the human intellect. So what I am talking about is commonly known as theodicy, the justification of God, the justification of the divine manifestation. And Sri Aurobindo, according to my knowledge, has the most complete but very justification, but acceptable only with great difficulty for people who enter into that kind of vision. All is that. All is Sat, Chit, Tapas, Ananda. All is Ananda. The suffering too is Ananda. It cannot be otherwise, because all is that and all is Sat, Chit, Ananda. And he has written several pages in the Life Divine just to explain that. And then there is the second point. Once when Nirodbaran, in this incredible correspondence with Sri Aurobindo, complained, he was in the doldrums, it was difficult, yoga was difficult, he did not see an outcome or anything. And he was complaining to his guru. Sri Aurobindo answered, don't forget that it was you who has chosen what is happening in the world. Because the equation is very simple. The divine is in us, the divine is all. If at some point things have made this manifestation, this evolutionary manifestation possible, we, being the divine, have chosen that. But, says Sri Aurobindo, now you have forgotten, and now you are playing on the violin of your complaints and all this, your lamento, but it was you. And that is such a touching argument, at least to me, that we have to go forward in knowledge, in exploration, to come to that understanding. I decided to choose this topic because I find that it is so important at the present moment in the Aurobindonian movement, in the integral yoga, to reflect about that. I have seen too many people who were choosing the light side, who were expecting the light side of the traditional things. This is an integral yoga. An integral yoga means knowledge, it means devotion, and it means works. Normally, people choose devotion. And devotion is, of course, the great burning of the heart in the love to the divine, but it is also a shortcut in many cases to fanaticism, because it lacks knowledge, understanding. Karma is for us the indicated way to be here in Auroville, to build it up patiently, to contribute our might, the might of our lives, in the work dedicated to all what we are in the middle of the great body of the divine. But then there is knowledge. And I think that the knowledge at the moment in the Aurobindonian movement is narrowing, has been narrowing to some interpretations, some schemes, you know, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and then there is matter, life, mind, supermind, supermind, always supermind. I have already said in the previous talks how something has left out there, has been left out, and that is the transition from the poor being that I am to this divinized being with divinized cells, divinized organs, with a body that is divine. There must be many levels in between of what Sri Aurobindo has called the new humanity, and the Mother, le surhomme, the overman. That is the important fact that Sri Aurobindo, it's the great revolution. Let's realize that we live in the great revolution. Let's get the courage, and if necessary the pretension, that we are participating in something enormously important. The great revolution of turning everything that was directed towards escape from what I have been telling here now up to this moment, to escape from it. In illusionism, in Buddhism, in all the yogas and all the religions in the whole world, to get rid of this burdensome body, this condemnation to birth. As Plato said, body is soma sema, body is like the box in which you are buried. He has turned that around towards the world. Is the world. If all is the Brahman, this world must have a meaning. Now that is easy to say, he has turned that around, but just imagine that he stood up against the whole tradition preceding him. Read the Life Divine from a certain viewpoint and you will see how it is a justification of his view, the world view of transformation, against Buddhism, against Shankara and illusionism. Chapter after chapter after chapter. He in India has done that. He has stood up against the whole tradition. He is never seen like that. He is seen as somebody belonging to the tradition. This is leveled out. It is watered down. There is one path, and this may have come up in your head, that also have a similar view, and that is Tantra. Not the Tantra of the left hand. Let's say the spiritual Tantra of the right hand. But let's realize that Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga is the super Tantra. Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga is the super Tantra. And why? The power, the Shakti, the goddess of the Tantra is the mother. Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga is the yoga of the mother. And in his thinking, a great change took place. In the beginning, you read the Life Divine and all the texts from the Arya, and you will see how he always recommends a kind of mental step to progress in the yoga. Take distance, take distance, take distance, and see. But around 1920, 25, something changed. And he said, rely on the mother. He said, you cannot do this yoga. The mother does it in you, only the mother can do it in you. This was a great change. And you know, all of you who have read Savitri, how when he describes his experiences in the world, when he describes the steps between humanity and the divine, where does he come in the adoration of the Divine Mother? Where does he come? At the point where he prostrates himself to the Divine Mother. Before everything was a kind of mental process that had been revealed to him. Afterwards there was and is the mother. So you see, if the mother is the basis of the integral yoga, then the integral yoga is a super tantrism. The problem which I want to touch on is, if one limits the movement, the aspiration, the surrender of the integral yoga, then and now in us, to a certain scheme, one is falling back easily on traditional schemes. And you must see and must have seen around you how much of what is the incredible innovation, this incredible surge towards tomorrow, has very often been presented as belonging to a traditional path. And that is something that can postpone and create difficulties on many levels. You see, for instance, in Thoughts and Aphorisms, Sri Aurobindo writes, the saint and the angel are not the only divinities. Admire also the titan and the giant. The white force, the black force, the golden force, the dark force. When thou findest thyself scorning another, look then at thy own heart and laugh at thy folly, if you are scorning another. If thou canst not love the vilest worm and the foulest of criminals, how canst thou believe that thou hast accepted God in their spirit? How shall he attain to Krishna who has never worshipped Kali? So you see, my intention is not to criticize. It is just to encourage in our way, our aspiration, our surrender among the great difficulties. These difficulties have their role. These difficulties are part of the whole. I have already said in a former talk that every avatar, when he comes, creates such a tension that it results in a big war. Sri Aurobindo called the Mahabharata the World War. In the Ramayana there is the World War with Ravan in Lanka, with Sri Aurobindo and the mother. There has been the World War. You may say, yeah, but there were two, or there were actually three. There were two hot wars, and there was one cold war, but all three were part of one system. And on the one side you see the action of the Asuras, clearly described by Sri Aurobindo and the mother, and on the other side how it is part of the evolution. Because if my grandmother would come back and you put her, let's say, on Times Square or in Paris on the Pont Neuf, she would go mad at once. This world is totally different from 100 years ago. There is the creation of the evolution in revolution, and a war is concentrated revolution. I am not propagandizing war, of course not. But the war is going on in us all the time. The Mahabharata is going on in us. Ours is a sadhana, wrote Sri Aurobindo, which involves not only devotion or union with the divine, or a perception of him in all things, but also action as workers and instruments, and the work to be done in the world or a force to be brought in the world under difficult circumstances. It does not seem to me that X, a correspondent, is wrong in seeing in it the same problem as in Kurukshetra. Mahabharata on the field of Kurukshetra, Kurukshetra, Dharmakshetra. So then for the Second World War, let us please remember that this is part of our tradition. This is what our examples, models, gurus, whatever you want to call them, have done. And at a certain moment in 1943, Sri Aurobindo wrote, I affirm again to you most strongly that this is the mother's war. It is a struggle for an ideal that has to establish itself on earth in the life of humanity, for a truth that has yet to realize itself fully, and against the darkness and a falsehood that are trying to overwhelm the earth and mankind in the immediate future. There cannot be the slightest doubt that if one side wins, and this was the Nazi side, there will be an end of all such freedom and hope of light and truth, and the work that has to be done will be subjected to conditions which would make it humanly impossible. There will be a reign of falsehood and darkness, a cruel oppression and degradation for most of the human race, such as people in this country, in India, do not dream of and cannot yet at all realize. These are strong words. If I am not mistaken, they were written to Dilip Kumar Roy. He also wrote, the victory of one side of the Allies would keep the path open for the evolutionary forces. The victory of the other side of the Nazis would drag back humanity, degrade it horribly, and might lead even at the worst to its eventual failure as a race, as others in the past evolution failed and perished. That was what they stood for. And then, of course, great is my amazement and a certain sadness that so many people want to turn away from that because it is war. We are for peace. It depends on the yoga you are doing. And there is also the sunlit path, surely, and everybody has his path. But we are talking about the integral yoga for the transformation of the world. And let us have this picture in our mind that if the divine descended in his contrary, he descended into absolute ignorance, absolute blackness, absolute inconscience. That was when the mother who had allowed that, the great mother, the creator, turned again to the divine and asked to correct the mistake. This is what the mother has said, and it is in all Gnostic systems. And then the divine sent his power, which the mother described as an avatar at the bottom of things in a cave deep in the ocean, which irradiated the light, which made evolution possible. From that absolute stone black darkness, filtered this radiation from that being that must still be there to make evolution possible into matter, into the animals, into the vitals, and we are carrying that evolution in us now. That is why the integral yoga fundamentally is an overcoming of the evolution in us. That is the reason why Mother and Sri Aurobindo so often have called Homo sapiens animal human. These are the daily struggles we are in, and of course the daily, hopefully, satisfactions of overcoming a little of that and going one step further, which is one step for humanity. Remember the words of Armstrong on the moon? But everybody here, unseen, who masters himself in one way, a part of him, makes one big step for humanity. So strong was that critical moment, 1939, 40 till 45, that the mother said afterwards, there was such a constant tension for Sri Aurobindo and for me that it interrupted the yoga completely during the whole war. It interrupted the yoga of the avatars completely during the whole war. And it was for that reason that the war had come, to stop the work. For there was an extraordinary descent of the supermind at that time. It came like this, and she had this massive gesture. That was exactly in 1939. Then the war has come and has stopped everything, completely. For if we personally had gone on with the work, we would not have been sure that we had the time to finish it before the other one, the Lord of Falsehood, the Asura, had made a mess of the world. And the whole affair would have been postponed for centuries. Not cancelled, postponed. That had to be stopped first of all, that action of the Lord of Nations. This makes us see history with other eyes. You know, I have written a few books, and there are people who call me a historian. I do not want to be a historian. I want to understand. I want to know what has happened. I want to see the coherence of this whole evolution to the point where we and I have come. It's not a matter of history. History studies historical facts for their own sake. It's a matter of understanding the coherence and the meaning behind us here. Sri Aurobindo has written the famous words in the essays on the Gita. Not till the time spirit in man is ready, not till the time spirit in man is ready, can the inner and ultimate prevail over the outer and immediate reality. The time has to be ready. Christ and Buddha have come and gone, but it is Rudra who still holds the world in the hollow of his hand. And meanwhile the fierce forward labor of mankind, tormented and oppressed by the powers that are profiteers of egoistic force, and their servants, cries for the sword of the hero of the struggle and the word of the prophet. How many see Sri Aurobindo as a warrior? How many see the mother as a warrior? If she was Lakshmi and Saraswati and Ishwari, she also was Kali and Durga. May I say again that what this is about is what we are confronted with day after day. This yoga is a spiritual battle. Its very attempt raises all sorts of adverse forces. When you are familiar with the Vedic times, you know when the rishis and the priests and the others had their altars in the forest, systematically they were attacked by vital and other forces who even threw all ugly things and everything that could desacralize the altars and the sacrifice. As soon as one goes into this yoga, as soon as one comes to be aware of it, and something feels attracted, be sure that the reaction will come. Its very attempt raises all sorts of adverse forces. Krishna calls upon Arjuna to carry on war of the most terrible kind, and by this example encourage man to do every kind of human work. Sarva karmani. Do you contend that Krishna was an unspiritual man and that his advice to Arjuna was mistaken or wrong in principle? Asked Sri Aurobindo, his correspondent. The Gita is the creed of the Aryan fighter. Know God, it says, know thyself, help man, protect the right, do without fear or weakness or faltering thy work of battle in the world. This was said to a Kshatriya. This was the task of a Kshatriya and the rationale of his life. And if I have read it well enough, you may remember from the very first vision of the glorious Godhead that there are many marks of a Kshatriya. He is armed for battle God, the glorious God, not the dark one. In a way, Arjuna projects more or less his own personality on that, as always happens. But here, in our case, we are not only Kshatriyas, the human being is not only Kshatriya. I have written about that, about the integration about the four Varnas. Sri Aurobindo has very clearly said, the four Varnas, not caste, Varnas, are present in every human being. The Brahmin, the Kshatriya, the Vaishya, and the Shudra. Originally, there was not a fixation in caste or whatever. And now again, all the aspects have to be taken up for the simple, but oh so complex and difficult reason that we are in an integral yuga. We are the battlefield. We are Kurukshetra Dharma Kshetra. And Sri Aurobindo talks about the war of our members. And we consist of so many parts on so many levels. I hope I get the time to write a little booklet, What is a Human Being? And you may say, my God, where do you get that simplistic idea? Well, I got that simplistic idea by reading and reading and reading science and philosophy and all that, and see the huge confusion people are about the human being. In the West, they have started from Christianism, Catholicism, and there is the soul and there is the body. What the soul is, nobody can tell you. In their catechism, it's not even written, and I have looked. And then Descartes, who was educated by Jesuits, took that up and divided the body, machine, and the soul. What is the soul? An epiphenomenon. This is a verbal label. It means nothing. And from then on, in science, machine and the soul is mind. Soul equals mind. That, of course, is so stupid that after some time science has dropped soul and kept the machine. This, in brief terms, is what the idea is of the human being. Then you read what Sri Aurobindo says that is the human being. The levels in us. Then the environmental consciousness, then the constant contact and inspiration and influence from other levels in us, of which he says hardly anybody is aware at any time. So we have all these members or organs, the levels in us. And every member in manifestation, every being in manifestation has the duty and the absolute allowance of working itself out in the highest possible degree. The Asura has the right to be Asuric in the highest possible degree. Our vital has the right to be vitalistic and sexual and greedy and egoistic in the highest possible degree. So has our mind, our idea fix, our discoveries, our limitations, highest possible degree. The blade of grass has the right to grow, so has the tree, so has the butterfly, so had the dinosaur, so has the bear and everything. They have the right to be themselves to the highest possible degree. So we are all that. In fact, we carry the whole past of evolution in us. We are that. A time will come, and people are dreaming of it, that we won't have to fight anymore, that we won't get old, that we won't have the impression, oh my God, it all goes past so fast, and what then? That we have to ask all these questions, that there be a matrimandir without quarrels, that there will be this and that all together here, because Aurobindo has such an important occult task. Occult. And everybody of us has such an important occult task by the fact that we do the yoga. And as I have already said, the mother has said, gaining one battle psychologically inside, in that Kurukshetra here, inside, can be more important than battles have been on the battlefield and are on the battlefields of the world. We should believe that. We should believe in our choice. We should believe in our destiny, because it has been said by great beings who knew what they were saying and who are with us. It is not for nothing that Sri Aurobindo and the mother always have encouraged to think as heroes. Heroism. For without heroism, man cannot grow into the Godhead. Courage, energy, and strength are among the very first principles of the divine nature in action. And of course, in the ashram, in the notebooks of the students, the mother has written a prayer in the same direction. The prayer in the ashram school notebooks reads as follows: "Make of us the hero warriors we aspire to become. May we fight successfully the great battle of the future that is to be born against the past that seeks to endure, so that the new things may manifest and we be ready to receive them." And Sri Aurobindo writes in Savitri, "O soul, intruder in nature's ignorance, armed traveler to the unseen supernal heights, thy spirit's fate is a battle and ceaseless march against invisible opponent powers." And that is what we are doing. That is what is attacking, what is around us, and what can be very cynical. I could tell a few personal of these little elemental beings that can pester you, and always in the same way, that make a door close just when you are going to pass and make you bump with your nose into it, or you throw something and they make it deviate into somebody's face, or there are all these, and we are helpless. We are puppets, because we are ignorant. Sri Aurobindo and the mother themselves were constantly pestered by such things. They also had the helpers. When the mother's soup was going to boil over, one of these beings came to pull her sari and say, but when Sri Aurobindo did his walk around the tree, in the 3 rooms which you may have visited, all at once all the clocks stopped. And he was dependent on the clocks. Why? Because he was in other worlds. He, like Alma in Tlemcen, had trained his body to walk and do that. In the meantime, and he was dependent on the clocks just to know what time of the day it was. All at once they all stopped. And he went to the next room, stopped. Next room, stopped. And I said, this is not a joke. Boom, all the clocks started working again. This is told by them, And I know very well I can say that here, because I am among fellow Aurovillians. You cannot tell these sort of things because it sounds so ridiculous for rational positivist people. All who would raise the fallen world must come under the dangerous arches of their power, of the Asuras, the hostile forces. For even the radiant children of the gods, to darken their privilege is, and dreadful right. For it is their privilege and dreadful right even to darken the radiant children of the gods. none can reach heaven who has not passed through hell. So, I would say, have a nice trip. They are our examples and inspiration, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and therefore it is so important to know what has happened in their lives, and it is so important to know what they have said, to try to understand, to live according to it, dynamically. Dynamic is one of the key words in Sri Aurobindo's vocabulary. How they have suffered themselves. They, great realized beings. I know I am at the absolute beginning. They were great realized beings. But when God's messenger, the avatar in this case, comes to heal the world and lead the soul of earth to higher things, he too must carry the yoke he came to unloose. But though to the outward eye no sign appears, and peace is given to our torn human hearts, the struggle is there, and paid the unseen price. The fire, the strife, the wrestle are within. He, the avatar, carries the suffering world in his own breast. If we know what we are, and if we know what other human beings are, these words alone may give us an idea of what the Mother did when she said, I took everybody, all the disciples, into my consciousness like in an egg. She did their yoga, which means he carries the suffering world in her own breast. And then of course there is the testimony of a God's labor, which always I would like to write fully out, but I cannot do, I don't have the time for it. But Sri Aurobindo has summarized it in Savitri. He fought shadowy combats in mute, eyeless depths. Assaults of hell endured and titan strokes, and bore the fierce inner wounds that are slow to heal. Sri Aurobindo. And he, of course, never gave one indication of that. He was there, he did his walks for his house, he ate, he sat. He has never seen a doctor till the accident with his thigh happened. He has gone through all the attacks, which also means illnesses and what upheavals of the body, in the body, and not only in that body, but he was doing the yoga of the world. Of the Mother we have also a glimpse, many glimpses, of her suffering. The other pole of the avatar in the last years of her life. That was the work in the depths, in the subconscious. And she said, when you go there, you go into the subconscious that is no longer personal, but that is the subconscious of humanity. Ours is already such an impossible task to go there. Well, we have some glimpses, because never suppose that everything is there. It is just something spoken to the understanding of the person who was listening. It is so important to realize that Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, as they have said, have always spoken and written on the level of the consciousness of the addressee, of the reception, the person who received it. And when you went like that, they answered for your good, for your progress. It is also so incredibly important to realize when one wants to understand the agenda and everything else that there were two mothers. And the one mother was the great mother. The other mother was the mother in the yoga. And it was she who cried out for pain. And it was she who could hardly get up the steps as if her leg was an iron rod. And it was she who went to these whole sufferings and said, a full day of suffering, 2 minutes of glory, or something like that. The great mother who had come to do the yoga in the body. When Sri Aurobindo was going to descend into that, he said, you have to stay because your body is better than mine. And the mother called her work, her yoga, la besogne obscure, the obscure chore, daily chore, le bas fond de l'insanité, the depths of insanity. Je ne crois pas qu'un être humain puisse supporter la vue de ce que j'ai vu, toutes les horreurs de la création. I do not think that a human being can bear the sight of what I have seen, all the horrors of creation in certain moments. Et c'est tellement pour vous apprendre, and it's so much to teach you. Les grands mots, les grandes attitudes, les grandes expériences, tout cela c'est très bien là-haut, mais ici rien de spectaculaire. Big words, big gestures, big experiences, all this is very good there somewhere above, but here, nothing spectacular. And in Notes on the Way we read, tout est très modeste, très tranquille, très effacé. Everything is very humble, very tranquil, very hardly perceptible. Et cela, c'est la condition du progrès, la condition de la transformation. And that is the condition of the progress and of the transformation. I have already often taught and sometimes said that we may deem ourselves happy that here in Aurobindo there are not too many great experiences. We have to do the besogne obscure, very simple, très effacé, not perceptible, because otherwise it would go to the head of one and maybe all, and it would be a great circus. We do not want that circus. And it is something the people who are in the official instances should understand, that this is not a spectacular yoga, not a perceptible yoga on the outside. We have no uniforms, we have no ceremonies, let's be proud of it. Ce ne sont pas des événements à grand fracas. Le voisin humain ne le sait même pas. These are not very spectacular events. The human neighbor does not even know it. Au fond, les proclamations, les révélations, les prophéties, tout cela c'est très confortable. Prophecies, evangelists, gospels, all that. Excuse me. That's very comfortable. You have something, you have a myth. People want the myth. And if they don't have it, they will make it. Careful that we are not making the myth here. Because here in this case, the reality is much greater than any myth, if you know what it is. Our myth is the reality, if we study it, and if we understand it, and if we try to let us influence it. I would never even think that we will go there where they have gone. They were the pathfinders, they were the hewers of the path in the virgin forest, as they have said. Let us drink it in what we can. And the things will happen in their time on all the levels of our being. Maintenant, c'est très obscur, pardon. At the moment, it's very obscure. Le sentiment que c'est très obscur, invisible, pas compris. I have the feeling that it is so obscure, invisible, not understood. Ce ne sera visible que dans les résultats longtemps, longtemps en avant. It will become outwardly visible in the future. Pas compris. Because what the mother was going through at that time was not understood. And as all the notifications are writing down of what happened then are for many people taboo, it's not understood today. One has to go and shove all these rumors and all these individual things aside and see what is there. When the mother came with a phrase, not even a sentence, a phrase from Sri Aurobindo, see what I have found, this is exactly what is happening now. And all the time she was referring to the fundamentals of that great teaching of the integral yoga. And her stage was an advanced stage where she even was with the question, what is happening? And where she said, I want the secret of the divine. She who was that, at that stage in her yoga, was asking about the secret, why the divine had to become material. Because this is ultimately what we are standing for. And we are going through all these occult things here. The presence of the matrimondier among us, that miracle. The miracles are among us. Every one of us, and also that incredible building there, which is much more than a building and which is not explicable. The miracles have gone before. They are happening at the moment. Auroville is growing despite all circumstances. The matrimondier is there in spite of all difficulties. And tomorrow will come the unexpected. Thus will the masked transcendent mount his throne, when darkness deepens, strangling the earth's breast. Condition. When darkness deepens, strangling the earth's breast, and man's corporeal mind is the only lamp. I think we are there. As a thief in the night shall be the covered tread of one who steps unseen into his house, and earth shall grow unexpectedly divine. I have talked about that another time. Now I would like to end with our fellowship, because I am a little saddened, not to use any other word, by the fact that there is this kind of desperation in many things in the Aurobindonian movement. And what is happening, and look at what all these people are doing, and what does it mean, and where is the meaning, and the aspiration has gone, ho, that you hear so often for the people of the first hour. It is not like it was then. Then it was much better. We have our pride. We have this incredible support at our fingertips. Number one, Sri Aurobindo and the mother are there. And one may even say that the mother is still more there. Do not misunderstand my words, because she has gone farther in the transformation of her body, which is there, the archetype of the supramental body. Sri Aurobindo and the mother are there. The supramental consciousness is there since 58. The consciousness of the Overman is there since the 1st of January 69. What do we want more? We have all the watering holes to go and drink from, spiritual watering holes. What do we want more? And we belong to a fellowship. You know, you had the Fellowship of the Ring, Tolkien's first book. We have our fellowship. There was and is, this is me who have written this, the sadhu conquering himself on the dusty or muddy roads, the Gnostic discovering, the Gnostic aspirant discovering the knowledge of his soul and its redemption, the Hermetist pondering the teachings of his secret divinity, the spiritual alchemist experimenting his own transformation in his laboratory, the Zen monk bouncing his head against the glass walls of insanity while trying to become truly sane, enlightened, the monk and nun kneeling in their solitary cell till their prayer is answered by a touch of God. They are our brothers and sisters. There is no past. There is only this great movement forwards to which we are now in the avant-garde. We do not have the pride of the robe. You know, at some time Satprem was sadhu, and he came back to the ashram from Rameshwaram or wherever dressed as a sadhu. And the mother said to him, I appreciate the pride of the robe. We don't have a robe. But let us have the pride of the non-robe, of the flame in our heart. May their force be with us. Thank you for listening so kindly.